is, what is the difference between alcohol abuse and alcoholism? It bothers me when I read people complain about their husbands drinking and people automatically assume the husband's unalcoholic. What is normal or healthy limit to alcohol, and when does it become alcoholism? And what is a healthy approach for spouses who have issues with their spouse who drinks? It's a great question. And sometimes what you find when you dive deeply into this is some of it is semantics and some of it's really not, depending on where you come from theoretically on this of what you believe it actually is. Now, we do know that there are really, kind of broadly speaking, okay, you kind of got two groups of people which you've identified here. Some people have problem drinking. In other words, they drink and it causes problems. Sometimes for them, they don't think it's a problem. I remember a guy that that lived in my dorm when I was a sophomore in college, and every day he would set up happy hour for the whole floor, and he'd pull out all the bottles and put a towel out there on his. He set up it in his doorway, literally in the dorm, and he was a bartender. He served cocktails. He called it happy hour every day. Probably learned it from his parents, and so we kind of got worried about him. And it's not like we were, non-imbibers either. It's, college sophomores. But we knew when somebody had a problem and when they didn't. And we said to him one day, dude, you ever think you have a drinking problem? He goes, no. He says, I don't have a drinking problem. He said, I drink, I get drunk, I pass out, no problem. Didn't cause him a problem, he thought, right? But come on, yes, it does. And when you get a question like this, one of the ways that we identify a drinking problem is when the drinking causes problems, okay? It either causes the person problems, generally where you see it is you begin to see it in performance, right? It affects their work in some way, or it affects their performance in other areas of life, or it begins to affect their health. And so they're drinking and it starts to interfere with stuff. I see this. I do a lot of work in companies and corporations, and they have cocktail gatherings and this, that, and the other. And you'll see a lot of people that they're having fun. They're going to a party. They're loving. Let's go to happy hour, and everybody after a day of work, and they're all engaging and talking about stuff. But then there's that one guy, and he starts to cause problems. His behavior gets out of line. And you might read about it in the paper. I mean, you see this in the Wall Street Journal. There all of a sudden there's, there might be some over-the-line stuff with harassment or other things, or it starts to cause functional problems. So somebody's got a drinking problem when it starts to cause problems. And one of the big areas that causes problems is in their relationships. Okay, so when it's affecting somebody, and it's affecting, if you think about those three areas of the pie, that you're drinking is affecting you clinically. It's affecting how you feel. Alcohol can affect, a number of areas of life, cause you to miss work sometimes, or start, interferes with family or friends, or clinically. It gets, alcohol's a depressant, and people get depressed or they get angry, they get hostile when they're not a nice drunk. Sometimes they lose impulse control. They start, sleeping with people they shouldn't be sleeping with, acting out sexually in some way, or spending money, or making unsafe decisions, or they're driving, or, sometimes they'll get DUI. That's a problem. All right. Now, how many of those are alcoholics? Well, depends on how you use the word, but somebody's got a problem, they got a problem. Now, I think it is another category though, usually, and this is one of the ways people distinguish this, is when somebody starts to build tolerance, okay? When you build tolerance on a substance, then you actually have, an addictive process going on. And tolerance is basically, it means your system learns to tolerate that level, and you need more in order to get the same effect. And so people that develop tolerance need more and more and more. And here's another big one. A lot of times people will have a drink to kind of, it enhances the party. They feel elevated. The Bible says that God made the wine that cheers the heart of man. It says that, or mankind. It says that in the Psalms. It's talking about all the wonderful things God did. But one of the things he did was he makes the wine that makes the heart of men cheery. Or, sort of like Jesus made more wine at the wedding. Celebrate all this. That's a difference in falling down drunk, right? And also, if you think about that, it's kind of like, make somebody, cheery or whatever. All right. But that's an abnormal state. When somebody's an alcoholic, what you begin to see is an addiction is when they need the drink not to make themselves feel, whatever you want to call it, but they need it to feel normal. So they wake up in the morning, they need a drink to be able to function. See, now you got a different deal going. And, like AA for forever, there's this moving into the disease model, which means that some people's systems metabolize alcohol very differently than other people's systems, and they develop, this dependency on it. And so that's broadly how we think about the difference. But here's the deal. Either way, it's not good. Either way, it's not good. I mean, if you go to there's a few passages in the Bible that actually speak to this, and Paul says, for example, it says, don't get drunk with wine, right? For that is dissipation. You start to lose control. You're out of control. It says, but be controlled by the Spirit. So when somebody starts to lose self-control, that's a problem, whether it's a problem drinker or an alcoholic. And then you go to the next question, how do you talk about it? Well, you talk about it. You just talk about it. But you talk about it in terms of how it affects you and how it affects the relationship and the reality consequences. You stay away from the shaming, you're an alcoholic, you're bad, blah, 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 blah. You talk about the way that the consequences it is having. Now, generally speaking, if somebody hears that, they go, gosh, you're right, I really drank too much at that party or Thanksgiving, I'm not going to do that again. And they change, then they don't have an addiction, which basically means they can't change. First step of 12 steps is that somebody realizes they're powerless. And once they realize they're powerless, then they realize what they do have the power to do, and that's submit themselves to a program that's going to end up rebuilding their self-control. See the difference? If somebody thinks, oh yeah, I've never met an alcoholic who say, oh, I can control it. They think they can control it. They can't. And everybody knows they can't. When do they start being able to control it? When they admit they can't control it. Okay, they came to realize in step one, they came to realize that they were powerless over this. Beatitudes start with blessed are the poor in spirit. Okay, so when somebody humbles themselves and realizes I've lost control over this, I don't have self-control, then they can submit themselves to a program that will actually of recovery, which actually will help them to regain their control. And usually, typically, the way that I think about this, somebody's truly an alcoholic, they shouldn't be having even a drink, because it's not long before that one reactivates the whole scenario. And so they have to continue in the program to make sure they stay away from it.